正門葛藤集第68則南仙有事南仙願前寺一日道に赴かず自社そうしじてど赴かしむし曰く我今日少女にあって有事をきつしてあくさ曰く和尚勝手でせずし曰く何時さって総主に問えさあ門の出するにあたってたちまち総主の顔を見るに王将の主に至って有事をきつすることを指す。Entangling Vines, Case 68. Nansen's Fried Dumplings. One day, Nansen Fugan did not go to the hall to eat. When he was urged to do so by his attendant, Nansen said, "Today I stopped in at the temple estate and had some fried dumplings, so I'm satisfied." "But you haven't gone out all day," replied the attendant. "Then go ask the manager of the estate," said Nansen. Just as he was leaving the gate, the attendant saw the manager on his way home. The manager asked him to thank Nansen for stopping by to have some fried dumplings. Well, I'm sitting up here for two reasons. Number one, I'm supposed to give a talk. And number two, the second most important job is to kind of arrange these ropes so they don't fall everywhere. It's quite inconvenient. I just want to warn anyone who wants to become ordained what they're in for. It's not, well, it's called the robe of freedom. But also it could be called the robe of fuss. But we are not fussing about ourselves. Oh, do I look good? How's my hair? Well, that hair part is not there. But the fuss is about, well, if you have to represent and you wear, so to speak, the Buddha's uniform, then you are already representing something else than just your own little stinky self. Everybody who has a rakusu wears a smaller version of this very kesa, the kashyapa, or surplice is maybe another word in English for it. And it is that piece of clothing that we hear about in the beginning of the Diamond Sutra, when Subhuti kneels down and what does he do? Yeah, he uncovers his shoulder. Guess which one? The right one. And this here indicates that. Now, how come we have that smaller version? One reason certainly is sure, because this is not very practical. Doing zazen in this is not so easy, but many, I think in the Soto tradition, many sits are with kesa on. Rinzai is different. We put on the rakusu. And I believe the raku just means abbreviated. It's an abbreviated, so a diet kesa, right? Shrunk down, smaller, but it has still the same portions on it, representing the Buddha's robe, which was made together from scraps of fabric and rags. The rags have become very fancy, as you can see, but it's still the same kind of spirit that we have in it, and everybody wearing the rakusu wears that to be reminded of being committed to this path of the Buddha. And now, of course, we can ask, what does it mean to walk the path of the Buddha? There's a part before that that is not often spoken about, and that is the path of Siddhartha. Because that's really what we want to do. We want to walk the same path of Siddhartha Gautama, who as a human being went into this endeavor of finding out what this life, what all of this is about. And to do so, he left home. Did all different kinds of practices. And quite often people think, oh yeah, the Buddha, he became enlightened under the tree, all by himself. But very rarely is it taken into account all the years he spent with other practitioners, doing this practice, doing that practice, eating 1 grain of rice a day, doing this kind of jhana. I don't know what kinds of yoga he would have done, but many, many different things. Until he finally said, okay, I'm tired enough to sit down for a week. Oh, there's a tree here. I'm not going to get up before I get this. It's either I'll die here or I'll see this through. That doesn't sound very upbeat, does it? And we might not feel that upbeat sitting here either. But this is exactly what Siddhartha went through. But he continued. And then after he awoke, the next thing was a period of silence. Because he realized he can't talk about it. And in the previous koan, remember, we heard that master was going to just retreat into the mountains and attend to his own business. But he too realized that his teacher's koan, his teacher hadn't finished the koan of repaying all these wonderful teachings, of doing hoon, of requiting the beneficence. The same happened to Buddha. Seeing all the suffering is one thing. Understanding and embodying and seeing through it is the next one. But that doesn't make the suffering go away. One still sees it. And in a very different light, and so much of a light that eventually all the things we can't talk about, we have to start to talk around. Because words just don't work, but we have to say something. But just saying something again is not enough. We have to do something as well. So this is my introduction that goes into the direction of this koan here. But since I mentioned the rakusu, every time I speak about rakusu, that was invented for a very specific reason. Not just convenience, but remember, every morning we have Bodhisattva's vow. And then first come wonderful statements about Tathagata and beasts and birds, and then it talks about human beings. If by chance they should turn against us and abuse and persecute us, why would Torai Enji write that? Well, because Buddhism has a long history of being persecuted. Not only in China, but in other countries, and also, well, in Japan. Kishaku, Haibutsu. Haibutsu Kishaku. How would you translate that?
Abandon Buddhism and go back to Shintoism.
Yeah, that's what it was. So it's not that long ago. It's not that long ago. And, well, I don't know what the future holds, but November is coming up, and there could be all kinds of things, including, well, Buddhism. No Buddhism. Yeah? Don't need Buddhism. But there was persecution early in China of Buddhism. The emperor actually put out an edict that, because frankly speaking, the political system, and in this case power, became disenchanted with the success of the Buddhist teachings in China. Monasteries were built. Land was used for feeding monks who, from the point of view of national economics, provide absolutely nothing. And if they're Zen monks, on top of it, they're proud of it. They're proud of it, of not providing anything, nothing. Money went into gold-covered Buddha statues, offerings, and so, well, the Son of Heaven doesn't like that. He didn't like that. And the edict was, well, it's all over. All your bases belong to us, right? Everything was seized by the government. The monks were persecuted, they were secularized. Take that kiss off. Go out in the field and work. And in order to hold up their vows, this rakusu was invented to be worn, hidden under the secular clothing. So sticking to it while not exposing it in this climate of being persecuted. So it is nice to know that we can wear these rakusus out in the open. And know that there is a history, that this is not a given. It's not a given that has always been freely available to everybody. Yeah. So here's our koan today. I mean, it's interesting. It's one of the very few koans that deal with food. Dumplings. There are other koans about rice cakes, but not so many food koans. And we get also introduced to Nansen. Nansen Fugan, who lived from 748 to 835. And as with so many masters, he got the name that we know him in Japanese, Nansen. Nan is Minami, is south. And Sen is a spring of water. So that's where his temple was. But his given name was Fugan. Fugan. We haven't chanted, we haven't chanted it in this session yet. But there is this general echo, that can be used at any kind of occasion to dedicate the merit of the chanting to the universe, in this case, the Fuego. We chanted in the morning meeting during Kessei, for example, and we chanted in the Japanese, Nega waku wa kono kudoku o matte. That is Fuego, Fu, and that Fu is the same of Fu for Fugan, so it means universal. And the Gan we know too. Some people even have it in their name. Gan. Shigo sei Gan mon. So vow. Universal vow. Southern Spring Place, Universal Vow Monk. That's Nansen Fugan. He appears in many cases. There are at least 18 here in the Shumon Katoshu, the Entangling Vines. 4 cases in the Gateless Gate, the Mumonkan. And 6 in the Hikigan Roku, the Blue Cliff Record. And 3 in the Book of Equanimity, the Shoyo Roku. So Nansen is a frequent flyer in the koan collections. And I'm sure I say nonsense. When I said Nansen, I saw right away some heads turning. Where's Kitty? Where's Tippy? Because Nansen is known mostly for the koan of cutting a cat in two. Remember one day the monks of the Jikijitsutan were fighting with the practitioners of the Tantotan about a cat. And Nansen came and took the cat and held it up and said, whichever side can say a word of Zen will have the cat. And if not, pulls out this big cleaver, I will cut the cat in half. Speak. I see. We are in for more dead cats. So apparently he cut the cat. Later that evening, his disciple, his most well-known disciple, Joshu Jushin, came. And Nansen told him what had happened. He probably was still washing his hands from the cat's blood or something like that. And he said to Joshu, so what would you have said? And Joshu took off his sandals and put them on his head. And Nansen said to Joshu, if you had been there, the cat would still be alive. This is what Nansen is mostly known for. Funny thing is, the next best known koan, Nansen's sickle. He must have had something about like sharp things, you know? Sharp things. Cutting, cutting, cutting. And that's something really important to know for this practice in terms of cutting. So he was a native of Xinsheng in present-day Henan province. And his family name was Wang. I know I mispronounce everything here because I don't speak Chinese at all. And my apologies for the ears of those who know how it goes. He became a novice at the age of 9 at the monastery in his native province, and it took him actually fairly long to get ordained, fully ordained, at age 30. So that's 21 years. First, like so many monks at that time, he devoted himself to the study of Vinaya, the monastic rule. Then he started investigating the teachings of the Lankavatara Sutra and the Avatamsaka Sutra. Lots of sutra study going on there. wonderful for us because otherwise there would be no transliterated sutras in Chinese characters. People like Kumarajiva helped, for example, the Diamond Sutra that we chant, to take what is there in the Sanskrit or in the Pali and basically map it to Chinese characters. So, there he is, Mr. Nansen. He went to another doctrinal school by the name of Sunlan that was based on the Madhyamika thought of Nagarjuna and his followers. And finally he found, once everything ran out, similarly like Siddhartha, Siddhartha had to go as long as it took to run out of things that work. Sesshin is the same way. At some point we'll run out, maybe not in one session, out of things to do on the cushion that are extraneous. Same thing here happened to Nansen, and finally he found the great teacher Bosatsu, who we encountered before in the koans. Baso. So in the Baso, so is ancestor, and the Ba is the character for what is that? Horse. Yeah. Ancestor horse. In 795, he became Bosatsu's Dharma successor, and he built himself a hermitage on that Mount Nansen, next to a spring, somewhere in the south of something that gave it the name. And he remained there for how long? Guess how long? Give it a wild guess. What is the number of years in Zen? 30 years. He remained there for 30 years. Yeah. But he was noticed. So in 828, the governor of a city in the same province asked him to come to the city and say, "Why don't you teach in my city here?" They started to engage in Dharma study, and this governor became a Dharma successor, one out of 17 successors of Nansen. A large assembly gathered, and his most important successor, of course, as we said already, was Joshu Jushin. There were others like Chosa Keishin, but Joshu is the best known one. So, what was Nansen like? Let me tell you a couple quotes from what he taught. Once, Master Nansen addressed the community. "My teacher, Master Baso, was known to say, 'This,' guess what comes? 'This very mind itself is Buddha.'" We just heard that in the previous koan, right? "This very mind itself is Buddha." This old teacher, which means Nansen himself, doesn't talk like this. I say, it's not mind, it's not Buddha, it's not a thing. Is saying it like this a mistake or not? He asked the assembly. Joshu rose, prostrated himself, and left. So that is how Nansen acted as a teacher already. But already during the time when he was a monk and studying with Bosatsu, this is how he behaved there. So while practicing under Bosatsu, Nansen took some time to also go and see other teachers. That is a very common thing to do at that time. And there were many, because it was the heyday of the great masters. So once he started out on a journey to visit the aging master by the name of Nanyo Echu. We know him as national teacher Chu, or Chu Kokushi. And two fellow monks came with him. Just after leaving Bosatsu's monastery, Nansen stopped in the middle of the road and picked up a branch that had fallen next to the road, and in the dust he drew a big circle. Then he addressed his companions and said, "What can you say? If you give a good response, we'll be on our way. Otherwise, maybe we shouldn't go." The first companion stepped inside the circle and sat down. The second companion curtsied. Nansen looked at them and said, "Let's not go." This is a little flavor of Nansen. So apparently, one day Nansen Fugan did not go to the hall to eat. It's like here, like not showing up for a meal. But like here, people keep tabs on everything that's going on. And why? Subhuti.
So we don't lose anyone.
That's right. So we know where everybody is. So we know that everybody is well. And so we know that nobody gets lost in the darkness of ignorance that might begin and turn into the darkness of wonderful, relaxing sleep. And a very common thing is to lie down and I'm just gonna not even close my eyes. And dreams come. Oh, I must be in heaven. There are bells ringing. So that's one of the reasons why we keep tabs on people. Here, it was the jisha. That word is used in here. Jisha. So Nansen was urged to do so, to go to the hall and eat by his attendant. Jisha. It's interesting how the names are that exist in the monasteries. Sha is just person, and the Ji is attendant, yeah. And even that is already a contraction, because the full title of the Jisha who works in the Zendo is Shoso Jisha. Shoso is the holy monk, because the Jisha serves the tea in the front on the altar to the Bodhisattva who lives behind those doors and peeks through this little slit, because we open it only on very special occasions. That's what the Jisha does. Shoso Jisha. And of course, that's not where it ends. Have you all received tea and coffee? Yeah, we all have received tea and coffee, because our attendant also attends to all these holy monks, holy beings who sit here. That is the Jisha's calling and their duty to do that. Then there's another jisha, and that is the jisha who serves in the inryo, which inryo are the quarters of the abbot. Inryo jisha. And since inryo jisha is such a long word, we take the first character in, we drop the second, and we take ji and drop the fourth. So the role of inji is the inryo jisha, the attendant to those who live in the abbot's quarters. So 2 jishas. Oh, Roshi, you haven't eaten. You should go to the dining hall. Nansen says, no. Today I stopped in at the temple estate and had some fried dumplings. So I'm full, thanks. But you haven't gone out all day, replied the attendant. And Nansen replied, well, go ask the manager of the estate. Now what is happening here? What is happening here? Is Nansen making something up to make the jisha feel better? Oh, I already ate. I went down to the gatehouse and had some fried dumplings. No. Opposition right away. Opposition. I know that you haven't gone out. And the trouble starts. What is the trouble here in this interaction? Taking a position. Taking a position of knowing. I know you didn't go out. But there are so many exits. And Nansen certainly knew how to use them. These Zen masters, they appear, in various places, just at the right time to kill cats, to appear out of nowhere at the gatehouse and ask for some of Ripple's food. So there's no way to know. How often has that happened to you when somebody says something like that? But I know better. I know you haven't gone out. Really, what the attendant is saying, and what the attendant should say is, well, I haven't seen you go out. Which is a very different thing to say than, you have not gone out. That is a fact. Well, I know we live in the age of alternative facts. But here already, the same thing happened. This self-referential kind of complete swallowing of one's own opinions, like a fish that's really hungry, that swallows everything. The hook, the line, and the sinker, which is going in full, is what is being pointed out here. Human beings are amazing. Our mind and our psyche is amazing. One of the most interesting and most telling ways that the mind works is when it comes to self-judgment. Everybody carries a lifetime appointed justice in their head, you know? And apparently, no matter who we are, they were always appointed by the opposing party. Isn't that so? Huh? You're bad. You're this. You're that. And very, very hard. It's a lifetime appointment. And whatever the judge says, we believe. It's fairly easy as long as the judgments align with our system of how we like to see ourselves. The judge says, that was brilliant. Oh, thank you, Your Honor. Thank you. The law has prevailed on my side. But if it's not, that's the funny thing. If that judge tells us, you are weak, you are worth nothing, we still say, yes, Your Honor, you're right. That judge always prevails, no matter what. And while feeling unable to do anything, worthless to this, not enough that, and we all do at times, we just don't realize that we installed that judge, and actually it's ourselves. We are the defendant and the court. In a very, very quick switcheroo. We go from here to there and we don't realize, hey, that is myself. I am telling myself that I am no good and I'm weak, I don't believe in anything. But that I really believe. That's a koan of its own, isn't it? How seriously we take that judgment of ourselves as being unfit, except for judging ourselves. So this self-referential entropy exists in the human mind. And then we start operating on assumptions. Assumptions. An assumption is such, assume, yeah? Assume. You know what assume means, yeah? When two people interact and just assume. Have you ever heard that? Yeah, Brian knows it. When you assume between two people, it makes an ass out of you and me. And that is really true. And how much do we operate on assumptions? And what is the difference between assumption and intuitive knowing? There is a difference. If you read the commentaries or what happens in the Blue Cliff Record, where it is said that a Zen student, when they see a horn behind a hedge, intuitively they know there is an ox. When a good Zen student sees one corner, the full four corners are exposed. When a Zen student sees there is smoke, they are certain to find the fire. That is not assumption. That is a different way. That is operating not on the level of some kind of cognitive activity, but that is operating on the perception that comes from our center of gravity, from our hara. And that's how we enter Chokkan no Sekai, the world of intuition. So this self-referential truth of what is true and not, often is based on assumptions. But how could that happen here? That attendant is somebody who studies, isn't it? Shouldn't that just, maybe that person is even awakened. Yeah, so what is it with that awakening? Isn't that the panacea? You get enlightened. Everything will be fine. I'm saying it over and over again. And I've learned it from Joshu Roshi, who always sat there and said, oh, no matter how often I repeat myself, you still don't get it, he said to us, The same thing I say over and over again. So awakening. Keep this image in mind. Awakening is like you sit in a dark room and finally, through whatever practice we do, the light comes on. Ah, wonderful. But then for the first time you see what's in the room. Oh, yeah, I smelled that. But now I see it's my own pile of dirty underwear that's lying over here. And what is that? Some rotting food. And some beautiful things as well. There are pictures on the wall. But awakening, number one, doesn't mean or guarantee that you will like what you see. But it is about the seeing. It is about the seeing and being able to see. Awaken is relatively uncomplicated. That's the realization part. Yeah? Opening this Dharma, right? Realize and actualize, right? Realization is the first step, and actualization is the ongoing cultivation of that. Nansen is very kind to the attendant and says, well, he's not saying, he already said, well, I did X, Y, Z, I went there. Apparently there's not enough trust between the attendant and Nansen to just stop there and says, I'm glad you had some dumplings. No, I know better. You could not have, because I know you haven't gone out. But Nansen, in his kindness, after already having stated the truth, maybe he still even had a little bit of the dumpling hanging in his beard. Oh, why don't you just go and ask the manager of the estate? The next thing should be, well, the attendant went to find the manager, but he actually didn't. It's just by happenstance that later, when he was leaving the gate, he saw that manager on their way home. And there, spontaneously, it was revealed that the manager said, oh, please go and tell the master. It was so nice for him to come down here and have some of my dumplings. This story doesn't end with anyone getting enlightened. But hopefully it ends up with the attendant looking at their approach to relationship. To not trust without verifying in yourself if we are just replaying some old kind of pattern, by not even listening, by not believing what in this case somebody who should be at the utmost level of trust has offered. But it's always about me, my truth. I know you haven't gone out all day because I didn't see it. What we don't see doesn't mean it's not there or it hasn't happened. It's very, very important to know that. There's so many things we don't see. That's why we have to awaken. That's why the light in the room has to be turned up. Sometimes it's not just flicked on. I mean, there are all kinds of stages of dimming. You know? It's a dimmer. Like at the Teisho temple, the light comes on. Now what about this mind and Buddha and wisdom in that context? I want to tell you one more thing about Nansen here. What did he have to say about this awakening? Once Master Nansen said to the community, all the awakened ones of past, present, and future do not know what it is. Cats and cows know what it is. There's different knowing, very different knowing. That knowing that was here presented by the attendant. I know you haven't gone out all day. That's not the knowing that is it. Cats and cows will return into cats and cows. Well, actually, Nansen was hoping for that. When he was getting old and one of his monks asked him, so Master, in 100 years from now, where will you be? And Nansen said, well, I will be a water buffalo at the bottom of the hill. And the head monk said, oh Master, can I follow you then? And Nansen said, yes, you can, but you have to have blades of grass in your mouth. You have to be a buffalo too. So how do we get to that cat and cow knowing? That is not a knowing of discourse. That is not a knowing of opposition between I know, you don't know. I have seen, I don't believe what I have not seen. A knowing that is different than the knowing that we take from the judgments that are handed down by our superior court here in our own setup. That is the kind of knowing that we cultivate on the cushion, that we cultivate by not reenacting new patterns, not reenacting old patterns, but by engaging with this dynamic activity of constant change. When the Han plays, remember? And then comes the pattern. 7 times, And after that, we have this wonderful progression. And in the end, that's it. Could be over any moment, it says. Shoji Jidai. Birth and death are important matters, it says on the Han. Mujo Jinsoku. Everything changes quickly. Mujo is impermanence. Anicca. Koin oshimubeshi. Make use of every moment. And the last one. Toki. Time. Hito. Human. Fu. Not. Matsu. Wait. Time does not wait for humans. That's what the Han tells us. Listen to it and know it with your whole body when it's played. That is what the woodpeckers know. That is what the cows know. That is what Tippy and Kitty know, our cats. That's what the little mouse knows that runs between them. And even that blood-sucking tick on somebody's ear knows it. No thinking, no knowing, no opposition. And if we do that, the universe has all kinds of tasty dumplings in store, even if they taste bitter at times. We still know that through Zazen, through our application to our daily activities here, we are working on this actualization of this becoming more and more able to see in the light of the Dharma, in the light of our own light shining like the sun in solar fashion. And this actualization and becoming really, really close to it needs this ongoing and assiduous practice. But don't be mistaken. When people go to the gym and they lift weights, right? It's not about that, right? It's not about that. You know what it's about? Right? The same, Zazen is not for the sake of Zazen. Zazen is for the sake of developing the strength to be able to act from that center of gravity, to have the strength to say, "No, Your Honor, you're fired." And then a new chapter begins. This is the last talk of this Holy Days Sesshin. And sometimes when we get to the end of a sesshin, our mind tells us, "Oh, one more wake up, one more yakuseki. It's gonna be over soon." And you know what? That's okay. But if you think that way, just remember the Han. It's gonna be over soon. And the number of chances we have to attend to our dirty underwear in the corner will just go away. The chances to see the beauty and to meet those dumplings that are in store for us might diminish. Yes, this is finite. And since it's finite, it needs our infinite dedication. Not necessarily athletically, but I would call Zen practice one of the most devotional of all practices that there are. Because we ought to devote ourselves to every moment that unfolds. It's a privilege to practice with you. It's a privilege to be in this space where so many human beings have come before, where bears and deer and mosquitoes and salamanders, newts have preached the Dharma for so long. So let's be engaged in a way that if we still judge ourselves, that judge can say, you have really given your best effort. So ruled